Welcome everyone to StarNet Region 6 Environmental Makeovers, Create a New Space. This is part of our developmentally appropriate series made for anyone who works with young children. So let's dive right in and get started. In this webinar, we will address the following DEC standards, 5.2 and 7.2. Environment is considered the third teacher. It's a powerful teaching tool if it's set up correctly. The environment can positively or negatively affect student behavior. It can keep kids engaged or make them bored. It can keep everyone safe or not. It all depends on the intentionality of setting up your environment. A quote from Loris Malaguzza, who is best known for his instrumental role in the creation and development of the Reggio Emilia approach, is there are three teachers of children: adults, other children, and their physical environment. So think about your favorite room in your house and one reason why you like it. You might say it is warm, it is safe, inviting, relaxing, comfortable, fun. So now think about a store that you dislike and think about why. Is it cluttered? Is the lighting poor? Does it smell funny? Is it dirty? Take a moment to think about what you dislike about it, and then think about how do you think your students feel when they enter your room? Just like your feelings with that room that you like and the store that you don't, the environment sets a stage for a child's feelings about being in school. If they don't feel safe in the classroom, behavior will show this. If they are bored in the classroom, behavior will show this. If the environment is chaotic or is messy, their behavior will reflect this. Allow the children to be the color in your classroom. Their art, their designs, their projects, their class-created rules, all of those should be a focus in your classroom environment. People don't always realize how much time and effort is sometimes necessary to make a developmentally appropriate, engaging, successful learning environment. But it is worth it. Things may take some front-end loading, some real work at the beginning, but once things are in place, then it's just tweaks to make sure that things are continuing to work. So, developmentally appropriate classrooms basically have four main ideas: a safe place, inclusive and diverse, different abilities and interests, and they are always evolving. So let's look in a little more detail at these four things. Let's talk safety. Feeling safe and secure leads to exploration, which leads to learning. A safe environment is one in which children are within teacher full view at all times, as required by state regulations. Safety is a priority when setting up your classroom. Look for exposed outlets, unstable furniture, too much space, which will allow room for running, jumping over tables, etc. Make sure your cleaning materials are locked up. Check for food allergies. Make sure rules are posted and referred to throughout the day. Children who know what to expect and who are provided consistency have fewer behavioral issues. I'll say this more than once because it is crucial. When you feel safe enough to take a risk, you are more likely to explore and learn. Be aware of implicit bias and prejudging students, whether based on how they are dressed, what they bring to school, their culture, race or ethnicity, or even just based on a prior teacher's perspectives. Let's talk about fostering inclusion and diversity. The representations of each child's race, ethnicity, culture, tradition, belief, gender, family structure, and ability should be prevalent throughout your best practice, developmentally appropriate classroom. Whether you choose to reflect this by posters, toys, print, conversation, books, music, every child and every family should be reflected in that room so that you need to know their identities. This is how children feel welcomed and get a sense of belonging to your classroom community. Some ideas might be using photos of the children, photos of their families, important people from the children's home culture, pictures and maps of their homeland, use of home languages, books, music, dolls, puppets, games, food in the dramatic play area, clothing in the dramatic play area, all from their home culture. Print used in the classroom should be available in children's home language with English translations, as this not only helps children and families feel accepted and welcome, but encourages English language skills. Your class needs to be accessible to all children, including those who need special equipment, whether it be wheelchairs, assistive tech, or walkers. For example, a child who uses the PECS system needs to have access to their PECS book, have PECS pictures throughout the classroom and across the curriculum to guide them. For some very helpful ideas, check out Kara's Kit, Creating Adaptations for Routines and Activities by CK Resources. This book shows ways to accommodate for inclusion. There are not only environmental strategies, but also strategies for materials and activities, leading from the least support to the most support. In addition, the children's abilities, skills, and interest should be represented throughout the environment. Now, does this mean every child's every interest needs to be in the classroom? Of course not. But we need to have enough representation for every child to know that they have been seen and heard. The individualized approach to interests should reflect the current students as well as the staff. Show things that you are interested in. Make opportunities for children to ask questions and gain deeper understanding of the world and the people they share it with. There are children's favorite things, whether it is a car, water play, music, situational interests. These interests emerge when something about an activity, a material, or a person attracts a child's attention or invites them to become involved. We want diverse interests and abilities to be represented in our classroom to open up the minds and the activities of the children who are in our classroom. We need to have a range available for children of different abilities as well. And the classroom should be always evolving. Ask yourself those questions. Are they playing? Are you addressing objectives? Check to see if children are not playing in an area, how come? How can you tweak the center to make children want to engage there? Observe to see how they are using the environment and adapt from there. As you add, remove, or rearrange things, make sure that you are best supporting current skills, interests, and the project or study currently being investigated in your classroom. Look at your room consistently to make sure all students have access to the materials. Is there enough softness in the classroom? Do children need alternative seating? Do they need a place where they can get away from the loudness of the classroom? When you see children who are fighting over the same toys, you may need to provide duplicates of popular toys or implement a wait your turn strategy. Look at these pictures and think about what inclusive practices you see here. I'll give you just a minute. Looking at these pictures, there are alternative seating of several different varieties. There are pictures on the shelves to match where the toys go for put away time. Items on the shelves are spaced out and they are not cluttered. There is a step stool leaning to the sink, as well as a pair of pliers attached to the faucet to make the turning on easier. Now, when we look at these also, there may be some areas that need to be tweaked. For alternative seating, it does not look like there are designated seating space for each child to sit, which in some classrooms would be necessary. In the toy picture, the toys are piled in the bin, which for a child who is unable to sort through it or is unwilling to sort through it may be a problem. The soap dispenser in the bottom picture may need to have some non-skid grips on it so it doesn't fall as she's pushing it down. For some children, less is more. Too many choices can be overwhelming for students, especially in the beginning of the year and for those new to school. Having just a few offerings helps. You can add in as children get used to the classroom. An inability to choose activities can easily happen when there are too many choices or too much clutter. This goes along especially with displays. Be mindful of the displays that are on your walls. Make sure displays are intentional and not just busy to fill up the space. Whatever is on the wall should be used. You should be referring to it throughout the day, whether it is the class-created rules, a numbers chart, or colors. Displays need to be at children's eye levels. And remember, at least 1/3 of the display in your wall should be child-created. So ask yourself these questions. Are there enough things for children to play with at each center? Teach to the whole child. Use different learning styles. For example, have a stamping center with no chairs. The proprioceptive input from standing and pushing down will involve a whole different set of skills than the art project done seated. Revisit these questions throughout the year to make sure that they are continually meeting criteria. Many children will resist cleanup if they don't know how to use the materials, if they don't know how to put them away independently, or if the shelves are messy. So make sure you ask yourself, can children easily return items independently? Now, as far as Eckers goes, the whole idea is a developmentally appropriate space where children can be as independent as possible and engage in deeper play. We don't want just surface play where they're flitting to one center to another without being actively engaged. We want them to get into deeper play to promote those critical thinking skills and begin those open-ended questions. So our well-arranged space has many different types of interest centers. It has areas that are protected from unnecessary interruptions. There is nothing more frustrating to a child who is listening to a story, gets halfway through, and now can't hear because the music center is directly across from them, and it makes it impossible to concentrate. Make sure your organization is such that children can get, find, and put away items as independent as possible. This is something that can be taught during large group. Role play that. Move on to the next thing, and then go back and review later to make sure that everybody understands what is expected. The classroom should have places to play with smaller groups, by yourself, or just with a friend. Not everything and not every child needs to be done with a large group. Make sure your interest centers are clearly defined and separate your active and quiet centers. Make sure there is a space for privacy. This is not the same as a cozy area. A space for privacy is just an area where one or two children can sit, talk, or play together. Have a good space. Our goal is to keep challenging behaviors in check. So a well thought out environment will help with this. We need to consider location, boundaries, storage, and the mood that we set in the classroom. So location. Predictability does not mean that the classroom never changes. Children need the safety in knowing that they will be able to navigate the classroom, find things that they are looking for, be able to play and work independently, and then be able to clean up successfully. Predictability comes in when children understand what is expected and how to do the things that they want to do. They should not have to climb over something to get to a center. You should be able to immediately tell how to get in and out of a center. It should look like a little room, well-defined entry and exit. If the children aren't going to the centers, ask yourself why. Is it not inviting? Is it confusing? Are there not enough materials? Is it cluttered and messy? Make sure that the different zones in your classroom are separated as much as possible. Active from quiet, wet, messy from dry, clean. Boundaries go along with location. Again, can the children easily see how to enter and exit a center? Is there space enough for play without invading someone else's play? Will the children be tempted to take materials elsewhere in the classroom to get more room? We don't want that. We want them to be able to play with their activity of choice in the area that it comes from. Are we limiting the number of students in one center so that there is enough room to actively play? Whether you do this by some kind of counting system, for example, only allowing 4 in a center and having a picture to show which 4 those are, or whether you just have a classroom strategy, make sure that you are implementing that. Make sure that the path to get around the room is well defined and that children are able to quickly and easily move from one activity to another. This is regardless of children who need adaptive materials. So a child who is in a wheelchair should be able to navigate the room just as easily as those who are walking. Tie in places and things that you've done to the environment in your room. If you go on a field trip to Pilcher Park to see syrup tapped, Add the relevant materials, such as a pancake house, into your dramatic play area. After a field trip to the pumpkin patch, even if it's virtual, you can return and make pumpkin bread, roast pumpkin seeds, or for those who can't make food, do some pumpkin crafts. Real life experiences make the best connections, and we need to make sure we are fostering that throughout the environment in our classroom. So think about, how often do you change your dramatic play? One thing should be mentioned. You do not need to have two separate themes in your dramatic play area. You are not required to have housekeeping and a store, but if you have the space and you want to, of course do so. Developmentally appropriate practice recommends, and Eckers requires, that you have a housekeeping center because it is a concept that children are familiar with. While some children may never visit a flower shop or a pet store, we nearly all have some kind of home. This is a great place to switch out materials for holidays, but also to incorporate cultural foods, menus, and so on. It is not enough to just put the materials in the dramatic play area. You need to explain what the items are, how they are used, what culture they might be used with, and invite questions to open the conversations about different cultures and different backgrounds. Make sure you are taking advantage of vertical spaces. These can be the side of a cabinet, the back of a door, or empty wall space. When you use vertical space, you not only give yourself more area, but there are benefits for the children, including gross motor skills, crossing midline, the up, down, top, bottom. Use it anywhere in your classroom as an added additional space. An added benefit of utilizing your vertical space is that you can work on left to right progression with the students. The space for privacy, or the cozy area, which again do not need to be the same thing, we want that space to be inviting, just big enough for one or two children. It does not have to be anything fancy, but this is a good place to put your social emotional items, to put some books, some fidgets. Make sure that there is enough softness in the area, and make sure that any items in the area have been taught at large groups so that children understand how to play with them, how to use the area. When you consider storage, make sure that it works for you. We've seen classrooms where things are over-organized, which sounds okay until you're looking for something and you've made your storage too difficult. Make sure that it is easily accessible, works for you, and takes as little time as possible. By making sure that children can open and put away storage bins on their own will save you so much teacher, teacher, teacher calls. With Eckers, accessibility is required. Children need to be able to get into bins by themselves and put those bins away. Clutter will cause children to be messy about putting their own things away, as the model that they see is messy. So take a look at this picture. Take a second to think about, what do you think children will do in this area? Pause the recording if you need time to think. When I look at this area, it tells me that there is no system to put things away, which means that as children take things off of this cart, they will throw them back on just as they see them. It is not organized. So we need to make it better. We need to make it easy for children to not only find what they're looking for, but easy for them to put things away. Here's another example. This one definitely is organized. I have heard both positive and negative comments about this area. While it is organized, there appear to be too many items on this art cart. Children may be overwhelmed by the too much choice of this area. Think about your own classroom. Do you have a creative storage solution that you use? In the bottom picture, this teacher put up hooks with pictures showing all the materials that should go on that hook. So the child dressing up as a doctor knows that the stethoscope, the white lab coat, and the briefcase all will go by this hook. Finally, think about the mood of your room. Make sure that quiet versus loud are as separated as possible. Some children may need to get away from that noise. It is overbearing. It is your responsibility to make sure that they have a place to do that. The art on the wall should be kid created as much as possible. Instead of having everything out all at the same time, rotate your items. More is not always the best, and in fact, when you rotate that item back in, children will look at it as a brand new toy. Leaving too much space can cause kids to be unfocused and also give them the invitation that this is an area where I can run around the classroom. The amount of space in the room and the way it is organized will affect children's behavior. I repeat often, but it is important to have enough softness in your room. So let's talk centers. Most centers are designed to encourage children to play in small groups, to play one-on-one with peers or staff, or to play independently. You want to make sure your students can access, play with, and put away as many materials as possible on their own. We all know there are always going to be some things, for example, some art activities, that will require more teacher supervision, but we want to make sure that if it can be done independently, it will be. There needs to be a balance between noisy and quiet areas, preferably separated by a buffer area. For example, the block center and the music center can be side by side, with art as a buffer, and then the cozy area and the library on the other side. There need to be distinct boundaries for each center so children know where the center begins and ends. This will also help avoid overcrowding. Each center should be set up to make sure teachers can see every child at all times. Let's talk about interest areas versus play centers. An interest area is a center that is devoted to one type of play. For example, blocks. A play center is an area that has different kinds of play. So look at this picture and take a minute to think about, is this an interest area or is this a play center? If you look closely, you will see this is actually a play area. The large vehicles and the interlocking blocks take away from the block area. The biggest thing about the block center is make sure there are enough blocks for the number of children allowed in the center and enough room. Blocks is a very popular center. If your students are not going there, you need to look at it and figure out why. So then there's the dramatic play area, another center that is very popular with children. The storage considerations can make your life so much easier. No matter what type of storage you use, from milk crates to clear bins, from a pegboard to a coat rack, just make sure that it works for you and that it is easy for children to independently play with and clean up materials. Keep the area as uncluttered as possible. Younger children may need more realistic props in the dramatic play, while older children can have more abstract and open-ended props. Keep your materials relevant to the current study in the classroom, as well as considerations of cultural, home, and holiday items. Again, dramatic play is a great place to consistently switch out and reintroduce materials. The play will be more involved if children are allowed to help create the area, so be sure to ask for suggestions. Remember the developmental level of our students. And don't forget, you do not have to spend a fortune. The pizza parlor in this picture was made with some extra cardboard hollow blocks and pizza utensils from the dollar store. The science area is one of the least visited centers when we talk to teachers and ask. We need to change that. Look at your center and see if you would want to play there. Often there is a microscope with nothing to look at, a scale with nothing to weigh, or measuring beakers with nothing to measure. You need to have not just the materials, but something to do with them. Put out an activity that will direct the students as to what is there. Be very excited about this activity when you talk about it in large group in the morning. Let children know that this is the new thing that's in the Science Center today. Get them excited about going. Whenever possible, your Science Center should be near natural light. Make sure you have containers for sorting, trays to hold natural materials, paper and writing tools, books that have to do with your science area, and discovery tools. In the Toys and Games Center, this is the one area that we most see clutter. And this is the area that most benefits from rotating things in and out. Remember to have many levels of complexity with your toys and games. Group the materials by type and don't overload the area. Rotate those toys for excitement. Make sure you have variety, complexity, safety, and durability in mind when you set up your Toys and Games Center. When it comes to the Art Center, make sure that you have enough materials for children to comfortably be able to make a project. Especially with 3D art materials, children can tend to take too many. So a great strategy we saw is using little bins from the produce section of the grocery store, and children could take only the amount of materials that would fit in the bin. Make sure you have a variety of paints, different surfaces to paint on, such as tin foil, paper, or plastic wrap. Have different types of paper. Include paper plates, egg cartons, tissue paper. Make sure you have things to cut, mold, and construct, and reinforce the process art versus the product art. Be sure to display children's artwork and be excited about what they have created. And remember, when it comes to displaying artwork, according to Eckers, 1/3 of your classroom displays need to be children's individualized artwork. This is from Indicator 5.3, Child-Related Display. To get a score of 7, you also need to have 3D child-created work displayed in addition to the flat work. And remember, you do not need to have every student's 3D artwork displayed. Have a few at a time and make sure that the other children have flat work displayed. Now, we all know there are those students who want every single art project they've ever done displayed. By using a system such as the clothespin system on the left or the picture with the clipboard on the right, you can guarantee that each child has artwork hanging, but they can only have what fits on their clipboard or their clothespin. Make sure your library is a comfortable, cozy area. Books should be displayed with the covers facing out. Make sure that you have your books rotated. Don't have Halloween books front and center in April or back to school books front and center in May. Have materials ready for story retelling. Some felt boards, puppets, props. Have materials there for children to create their own stories. One of the best things to have in your library is books with photos of your children. Even those who are reluctant to come and read are often more than willing to come and look at a book that features them in it. The classmate books are one of the most important things you can have in your library. A popular center is the sensory area. You do need to have sand or water, but you do not need to have both at the same time. Switch it up to make things more interesting. Remember, for Eckers, your sensory center has to have a pourable, non-food material. So while kinetic sand or shredded paper is a fun sensory item, it will not count as your pourable sand. Make sure that you have materials to go along with it. You can have fidgets, rolling pins, measuring cups, muffin tins, squeeze bottles, molds, and gardening tools. Be creative and hit up that dollar store. Remember, do not put food items in your sensory bins. While beans have always been a popular item in the sensory bin, developmentally appropriate practice frowns on this, and Eckers requires this not to be present. Not only do some cultures and religions frown on using food as a play tool, but also it is disrespectful to children who do not have enough to eat at home to come to school and be playing with food. So just be respectful and mindful of that. The environment tells children how to act and respond. We want enough variety so children don't get bored, but not so cluttered that they are overwhelmed. We want to highlight the diversity, cultural respect, and developmentally appropriate materials in our classroom. We want to foster independent, deep play, and critical thinking skills. We want children to be able to feel safe and comfortable enough to try things that may fail and then get up and try again. The being able to stick to it. For social emotional support, many children benefit from being able to visualize the activities of the day through a schedule. Photos of classroom expectations, rules, and procedures will encourage children's independence, particularly with cleanup and care of materials. Use labels with both words and pictures to make cleanup easier. Introduce new materials during large group. Give a mini lesson about their use and their care. Model how to play with them and let the children role play the care. This fosters the independence and gives the children that safety net of knowing what to do with the materials and encourages exploration. Having your rules and procedures posted is a first step, but make sure you are referring to them during the day to reinforce. Students will get to the point where they will refer to posted rules and expectations on their own, and this is our goal. The classroom should be predictable in that students know how to navigate, how to access materials, how to independently play, and how to clean up. We want a setup that will prevent challenging behavior. The child who can't get the lid off the storage bin may get frustrated and act out. The child who sees a large open space as a runway will do just that. They will run. Look around your own classroom and see what works for you, what doesn't work. Make sure that you do this and also get down on your knees and do it again. See the classroom from the child's perspective. There are many times that the perspective of you as an adult standing up is not the same as a child who is much shorter. So make sure the things that work for you at your height also work for your students at that height. Take a minute to think about your room. What can you change? What works? What doesn't? Don't be afraid to try something. Realize after a few weeks that it's just not as successful as it could be and tweak it or change it or take it out entirely. It is definitely a trial and error type of procedure, and things that worked last year may not work this year, but they may work next year. You just have to be aware of your students. So think about, what changes can you make tomorrow? What changes can you make by next month? What changes will you make at the end of the year? An easy way to do this is pick one center a week. Observe the children in the center. See what's working, what isn't, what can we change, what can we rotate out. These are some of the resources that we used to develop this webinar today. Thank you for your attendance today at this webinar. We would be more than happy to help you with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding your preschool classrooms. Please email or call us at any time. We're here to help.